Brooks. Thank you for being with us this morning. We really appreciate it. Good to see everybody here. Happy almost fall, and I hope everybody had a great summer. Councilmember Brooks, we'll just jump right into it. If you could tell us a little bit about yourself, where you call home, and your path to council.
Sure. Thank you so much, Jake. Well, I am Councilmember Kendra Brooks. I'm the first Working Families Party elected official in the state, I think, in 70 to 100 years. My path into politics was through activism, primarily education activism. I am a mother of four, a wife, grandmother, aunt, community leader, all those things. Those are the things that kind of speared my interest in politics, but originally it was primary through activism and advocacy. So when I decided to run it, the only reason I did it was to make sure that folks from my community had a seat at the table. I am from the Nicetown section of North Philadelphia. I lived there most of my life. I raised my children there. And I enter politics with the lens of speaking for folks who won't necessarily get the meetings with business leaders and politicians, and making sure I'm there to bridge the gap. What was your other question? I think that's who I am.
That was it. I mean, I was curious where you call, right? Being a group of realtors, I'm always curious where our council members live. But
I'm a council member at large, so I serve the entire city.
Right, you represent the whole city. What committees do you currently sit on, and what are you active with at council?
Okay, so I chair the Committee of Intergenerational Affairs and Aging. I'm on the Committee for Education, Housing, Public Safety, Parks and Recreation, Streets Department, and it may be one other that's soon to change because there's a lot of shifting around of council leadership, and some of my colleagues that have just resigned sit on some other boards that I may not be on or I have interest in being on. So that could change over the next couple of weeks, not just for me, but for my council colleagues across the board.
How are things going with the recent shift and announcements and
I feel like it's a great shuffle. I think, we have some leaders in council have resigned, which changes how things will be done. Keep in mind, I'm a freshman, so I barely understand what happens at the leadership level.
Okay.
But the reality is that many of us freshmen will be moving into leadership just because there aren't any available seats. Council president decided to do a special election, but he's only doing it for the district seats, which will still leave 2 vacant at-large seats and maybe potential more vacancies coming. So
supposedly, I think we have a couple.
This is going to be a very interesting fall season for council, but we are still committed to keep things moving along. We need we still only need 9 votes to pass something, and we still have the availability to make something veto proof because it's still at least 12 of us here now.
Okay.
So we expect to move things along as soon as we get the realigning of council committee chair seats. I think we'll be flowing as usual.
Got it. So public safety is always a big issue, and quality of life concerns for our members, for the people we represent. It's been a sort of rough season, summer. What is council doing to address crime and work on these issues?
I mean, we've done a lot of things already. We have implemented a lot of prevention strategies and funneled money into programs around prevention. We allocated the money towards some investigatory stuff that the police department asked for, towards solving crimes. Is more than just arresting folks. We need to make sure that we're solving the crimes. Because it doesn't make sense for us to have a growing role in the prison populations because we aren't moving people through the system as we should. So, I mean, we've made the investments And we're still keep open-minded to what could happen, what more we can do to work on these issues. But, you know, for me, when I think of crime, I think of public safety and what does that look like? And it's beyond policing. It's
Right.
making sure that we have the proper supports for folks that are in crisis, that are having mental health needs, and also things like non-criminal offenses that happen. If we have a shortage of police officers, we should allow someone else to handle those so the police officers can do their job. Currently, we have a lot of calls through 911 that are non-police matters that pull police away from their current duties. And we're trying to find a way to streamline that and focus so police officers can focus on their job, which is to serve and protect and solve crimes.
Right. Makes sense. Appreciate that. Many office buildings are still vacant, hurting local businesses. How do we get people back into the city? Are there things that City Hall can do to sort of bring businesses back in the center city? And
I mean, we've been having the conversations with, I'm going to mess up the acronyms, but the groups that not just do tourism, but also handle the flow in Center City. So there's still, you know, we're going to continue to push to keep Center City flowing. We know that this is the hub of the city, and actually the hub of the region when it comes to arts and dining and all this kind of stuff. And we plan to continue to build that up while we're working with organizations and companies to bring their workforce back into Center City, into office buildings. But the reality, I think working from home has been easier for some people. So I think it's up to different companies to figure out what's their best way to kind of balance out cost effectiveness and some of the benefits that they saw in COVID from having people at home. So, I mean, right. It's a part of a bigger conversation that, you know, we're working on.
Did you enjoy work from home, or are you glad to be back in action at council?
I have 2 teenagers, 3 grandchildren. I am auntie grandma, so my house is the drop-off location for most kids, and still run council sessions and meetings from home. So that answers my question. Now,
yeah. Probably
work from home quieter. Is far busier for me
it's probably quieter at City Hall.
Yeah, so I still came into the office even during the pandemic when I could. I would spend some days here because, you know, it's a lot. I have a bustling, robust family.
Right. So residential rentals, skyrocketing rents, housing shortage have been a huge focal point in City Council, including rent control. Do you have a position on rent control and how we address sort of these affordability issues and shortages?
Yeah, so I do believe we need to do some level of rent control, rent stability, and I'm willing to have these deeper conversations to figure out how can we get there. The reality is that people are being priced out of Philadelphia. That's why we also signed off things on rental assistance for folks. We're trying to do the best we can to maximize people being able to live in Philadelphia, everyone. Because if we push our workforce out of Philadelphia, the same businesses that we're asking to stay open in Center City won't be able to stay open if people have to travel hours to work. And currently that's what we're creating in our city because rent affordability is out of control. And I know a lot of landlords and property owners realize that with the new tax assessments and all these things are kind of forcing, you know, the market to go in a different direction. That's why we also made those investments in the homestead exemptions and all the other things that we can do to make sure we can handle, that we can support folks from having to, you know, being pushed out the city because of rising rental costs here in the city. And also another thing I'm working on is PHA to home ownership. How can we have more PHA folks transition into home ownership, which will, I mean, it will reduce some of the housing stock because of the rental market, but will also stabilize neighborhoods and allow people the opportunity to be homeowners as opposed to renters. And that's something that I'm focusing on. And we're still trying to figure out existing programs and how to improve existing programs.
That, yeah, makes sense. I had a segue there and I lost it. Oh, the assessments. The rollout there was kind of a mess. The everything that went down was kind of rushed. Are measures being taken so that doesn't happen? Like, I remember in 2016 when we went to the actual value initiative, we had the same sort of crazy rollout and huge increases for people, and then we just had it again 6 years later. Are we taking measures to fix the problem so we're not doing this every 5-6 years?
So I know my council colleagues, I think Councilmember Johnson has been working on a lot of those, because I realize that the homestead extension and those things won't necessarily help landlords, but we need to figure out a way that it won't cost burden, our landlords and
Long-term
our,
residents,
right.
absolutely.
We need to
Yeah,
kind of
no,
balance
I
out the
mean,
two. And then in
right.
reality, in full transparency, when the administration dropped the tax assessments in the middle of budget season, we got it the same time everyone else got it.
Right.
So when we saw the changes, so some of us kind of bustled together to figure out what we can do as immediate response. And I think it's going to be an ongoing conversation, because if we don't support the landlords, we're going to be back in the crisis where rents are
Right.
rising. And
cyclical, right. Yeah.
So we're aware of that and we're working on it. I think, like I said, when we got the information, it was time for us to pass the budget. So we pulled together what we could do in the immediate response, but I think it's going to be an ongoing conversation as property values continue to increase in the city.
Right. Speaking of the administration, a mayor who admittedly is looking forward to the end of his term, what's it like working with the administration right now? How is that going? Is there engagement there? Or you?
I think for me, I have good relationships with various folks, a part of the administrative team, as well as the managing director's office. And I think we've been able to still keep things moving regardless of our current mayor's position on where he is with governing.
Right.
He still has a pretty active team that, are still responsive and are still getting the work done.
Okay. Going back to housing and development priorities, is anything in the works in terms of, you mentioned PHA to home ownership. Is there anything else in terms of right, we have, part of the issue is simple supply and demand. Where do you fall on development and getting things sorted?
So I do believe we need more affordable housing stock here in Philadelphia. I'm not anti-development. I just don't believe all development should be, $500,000 condos.
Sure.
Throughout the city.
Yeah.
We have to balance who's here and who we're attracting as part of the same conversation, because it goes back to all the things that we love and enjoy about the city. If we don't have a worker base that can afford to live in a city, it puts us at a default, because people can't afford to live in a city. And currently, if we get our current city workers are required to live in a city. All city workers don't even make $50,000 a year. We have a large contingency of city workers that make less than $50,000 a year, therefore cannot afford the current affordable housing that we have in the city. So I'm for us creating some solution around new development. The more housing stock is available, the more reasonable we can keep prices. And we're looking ways, and that's kind of why I was happy to take this meeting, because you guys will be the ones that I would have to kind of figure that out with. We have to do this together, because ultimately, another thing I want to add to, ultimately we need to work together in order to get what we need. But I also would like to see more transparency around investors that are coming from out of town and making purchases, because we realize local investors, small mom and pop investors, are losing out immediately because they don't have the capital to really play in this game around housing. That we want to make sure that everyone is able to, be a part of what Philadelphia is growing, this growing and building market around development, around investment, and around, real estate in our city. And the only way we can do it is some more transparency on, ownership. And I think I hear this a lot from my smaller landlords and smaller realtors, that they just can't compete with corporate out of town investors.
Yeah, there's a lot of institutional money out there right now.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, the home ownership rate in Philly is sort of flatlined or declined. I mean, I think encouraging PHA to home ownership is a great idea. Is there more council can be doing? Do you have an agenda to push that? Or there,
So we have multiple
the
programs.
Philly First Home Grant is a great, right. We support that.
So we've been pushing, we've been trying to find partners to continue to push folks towards home ownerships. And I think that's our role currently in council. How can we find, partners in the banking industry, the mortgage industry, that's willing to, help us push affordable home ownership for
Right.
low to moderate income folks in our city, because that's stability, and that's what we're looking to do. And those are the folks that stay. A lot of times some of our higher income folks are transitioning, through college, through the, a professional lifestyle. They could next year send you to Minneapolis or Seattle. How can we make sure our workers, we think about, for me, I think about when we think of workforce housing, it has gotten a bad name, but workforce housing means that working folks can afford to buy houses in the city near work and continue to grow communities. And that's what we're looking at. And we're, like I said, we're in the beginning conversations with Council President's office about making this happen here in Philadelphia, and how can we do more? Because we went from, 50-60% home ownership to
I think it's under 50 right now.
Under 49 or 46. And we were with a growing city, a growing young city, and we need to find a way to flip that.
Well, and especially in underserved neighborhoods where it's in decline and things like that. I know Council Pres is working on 1,000 affordable houses for city employees and other things like that. So Philly's highest wage, nation's highest wage tax. We saw a little reprieve in the business income tax. Is there more we can do to alter our tax structure to encourage business and promote business and bring people to Philadelphia?
I mean, we're trying to balance the two, because if we don't have these taxes, we can't also provide the city services that we want to make the city safe.
Right.
Taxes fund, street cleaning, public safety, all these things are through tax dollars. And I think currently we're trying to find an equal balance of taxation and services. And the same things that, folks say keep people from not wanting to do business in Philly are the same things that if we don't tax them, will also keep people from wanting to do business in the city.
Right. Double-edged
So we have to find a balance between the two. And I'm not really sure where that sweet spot is. I think we'll just have to continue to find ways to balance it all out.
Right. Sorry, I'm just we rushed through my questions there. What opportunities do you see for the city? Where do you see Philly going? What are you excited about?
I think there's so many things. I think COVID gave us the opportunity to reimagine our city. I think prior to COVID, we had a growing cultural, we were a growing cultural center for the region. We are affordable, whether you're from DC or New York, affordability, all those things are available in Philly. And I think as we begin to reimagine who we are as a city and what we can do and balance out everyone that's here, if we're the city of brotherly love, we need to show that. And all brothers aren't six figures. We have, if you have a family, some folks may be a doctor, somebody might be a janitor, all in the same family. How can we make Philadelphia, they say the city of neighborhoods, the city of thriving neighborhoods. And it's going to look very different across the board. And I think collectively with government and the private sector, we're able to do this, but we have to be willing to have conversations. Everyone has had to be willing to throw in something. Everyone's going to have to be willing to make the sacrifice for us to get there, because a city where business is thriving, when people are thriving, and and we have a quality education system, we have the ability to have the city of our dreams. And I wholeheartedly believe that. And I think we just have to truly reimagine what it looks like for Philadelphia, because I see right now we're at the opportunity. We're at the brink of something great. And it doesn't, I kind of get a little upset when people only think of Philadelphia from an austerity mindset. We were growing, we were thriving, we are still growing out of the pandemic. And that's what we have to continue to look at and find ways to work together to make it happen. Because no one is there's going to be some of everybody still here.
Right.
And so we have to find a way for us to live here together.
Yeah. So you said education was a big priority and something you've been engaged in. How do you feel about the new superintendent? How is the school district doing? What's going on there?
I think we have, once again, I had an opportunity to meet with Dr. Wallington. I really respect a lot of his vision that he has for the city. And over the next couple of weeks, he's done last couple of weeks, he's done a really good job with transparency, which is one of my major issues I had with the school district as a parent and an advocate and an elected official now. Transparency has been very poor around.
See it on all sides. You get it all on sides there.
Yeah, I thought it was just because I was a parent and then I was a rebel rouser, but now I sit on the education committee and the level of transparency still was not good over my last 2.5 years. But however, with the school closures for the heat and all that, Dr. Wallington and his crew has been amazing, kind of sharing information out to families and to council. And I'm looking forward to more of that. We've already had several conversations with his team moving forward. Although the education committee has not met, because the chair of the education committee is also someone who has resigned. Where as soon as we are restructured, we'll begin having more conversations around the facilities.
Right.
One of the reasons 100 schools were closed is because of electrical situations, electrical wiring and various infrastructure problems that we were told, because this is one of the number one questions I had when I started during the pandemic, that those things were going to be resolved. But now I've been told,
empty school buildings for a year. We could,
I asked the question, I was told they were going to be resolved. Now, the answer that I'm receiving is that between 2025 and 2027, the infrastructure will be up to par. Because keep in mind, these were 10, 15 years of disinvestment into infrastructures and schools. So They have a lot of catching up to do. But I saw your face, I was the same way. But when I put it together, after 15 to 20 years of not taking care of something, we have over 200 buildings.
Right.
It's going to take some time to get, and some of them are far worse than others. We have full HVAC systems and huge facilities that are completely down, outdated. They need to get the parts and all of. So once someone explained with me what was going on, I wasn't as angry.
Right.
As I was when my children's school, my grandchildren's school were all on 100 schools that were closed because of weather.
Well, my son's only 16 months, so you got a few years to get the facilities up to par before I have to worry about sending them to,
See, those are goals. Those are goals. My goal is I won't graduate my grandchildren under the same conditions. I have one more at 9th grade, so I don't know how it'll be by the time she graduates. And she also went to one of the schools that I had been advocating for around lead and asbestos. But the programming was good. And I think when I think of education, we do have some good programming in the city. We just need to continue to invest. We need to invest in our children like we invest in other services. And currently, and sadly, those aren't the first things that we decide to invest in.
Right. No, anytime I've ever gone on a school tour, I've always been very impressed with the educators, with the
Right.
principal. It's getting the facilities and the numbers and resources, I think, in a better place, because that's one of the things we hear about a lot is people, once they're school age children,
Yeah.
they got to leave the city to go to Lower Marion or wherever. So if we commitment to the schools, I think makes a lot of sense. I'm going to hop in the chat here. There was a question about our new potential Sixers stadium in Chinatown. Is that still in the works, or is council hearing anything about that? You've at 8th and Market, the development they're planning?
It has went dead silent. I don't know where or what the status of that is. I would have to reach out and ask one of my other colleagues, because I haven't heard anything else about it. Like sometimes things have a lot of momentum,
Right.
and then it kind of fell off. So I'm not really sure. I bet you Councilmember Thomas would have an answer for that. I had to ask him.
Okay. Reporting is the Philadelphia Police Department is short 1,300 police officers. I know we have some issues with the Heart and Lung Fund. What can we do to I mean, I believe they just eased the residential requirements, but is there more we can be doing to encourage police officers? I know you spoke a little bit about this earlier, but yeah.
I think, well, keep in mind, hiring police officers is a national problem. It's not a Philadelphia problem. It's a national. I sit on the Public Safety Committee for an organization called Local Progress, which is local municipal electeds from across the country. It's a problem everywhere. I'm not really sure what we can do to so we invested in recruitment. They loosened up the residency requirements. I'm not really sure what else we can do to move that forward besides reimagining what we can do. And that's one of the things I mentioned earlier, like allowing the officers that we have to focus on that. And, we've supported the co-responder program, where you have a trained mental health professional responding to mental health crises, and various programs like that to help support like homelessness and other things that we use our police force for, so police can focus on police business until there's a solution. But like I said, there is a national crisis with hiring police officers, and it's not just Philadelphia police officers. I'm talking about the Sheriff's Department, SEPTA, Penn, Temple, everyone. So, and this is even in other municipalities. So I'm not really sure what the solution is. That's why I keep talking about reimagining. We can't keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. The realization is that we can't hire officers. We need to do something in immediate to promote public safety in our communities.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you're doing or that we can do to support, as you said, local mom and pop investors and landlords, to help create quality, affordable rental housing that sort of still incentivize landlords and can make this work?
I'm kind of looking to you guys to tell me, like, if you guys give me some great ideas that we can kind of move forward, I'm willing to look into it. I do realize that, incentives go far, but I'm not really sure what to do, because we have a huge number of landlords that don't want to rent to our Section 8 and our HUD voucher places. I don't know what to do about that. Like, so we have a backlog of constituents that are looking for housing and we can't place them.
Yeah.
I don't know how to support them. I don't know. This is why these conversations are important.
No, absolutely.
We don't know what to do. Like, we have landlords, on one end that are with the property reassessments and the rising rents in certain areas. You can't get the rent, the renovations you would need to do on a property to even get the rent that you want to ask, but all of these things that are happening. But then we also have a long list of constituents that need a place to live.
Right.
And that's why this partnership is so important. If you know any landlords that are looking to take folks that have Section 8 vouchers, we have a list of folks that we are looking to house.
Right.
Is there
I think
something or more
yes.
a screening? I don't know what to do to kind of help with this conversation,
Right.
or at least also to help, mom and pop landlords be able to keep their properties with the growing rents and with the growing tax
Right.
assessments, and not raising the rent all at the same time. I realize there's a balance between the two.
Are there barriers for landlords to accept Section 8? Are there things we can do to make it more attractive?
I think once again, that's a question to you guys. You guys got to let me know the barriers that exist. What are the things like, and keep in mind, Section 8 is a federal program. So the city of Philadelphia cannot change rules that are set by federal guidelines.
Right.
And I think Councilmember Jones did some incentives to help support landlords do repairs to properties, but I don't remember the name of the program that he created.
Is there any way, I mean, a homestead exemption for private landlords or individual, for people who own a right? We don't need to incentivize or subsidize corporate landlords, but is there, some way that we can ease the burden for the tax increases?
Well, with the homestead, it's still, once again, a state level thing. So
Right.
It's something we would have to work at the state level to be able to support or change the current structure.
Yeah. I'm just gonna go for it. We're gonna get into the big one. What's your position on the tax abatement?
Oh, this year, first of all, I campaigned on ending the tax abatement.
Right.
If we were to do any level of tax abatement, it should only be used to incentivize low income and affordable housing. Currently, or even major renovations to communities.
Right.
I think currently the way we have done the tax abatement in the city has caused a lot of folks to, get rich quick and move out the city, but it has not done enough to stabilize, some other folks as well. And I think if we incentivize the investment towards major renovations, we're allowed to maintain some of the stock that we currently have. If we allow it for low income and affordable housing, market rate housing, not market rate housing, low income housing.
Right.
With,
workforce housing.
50% or lower AMI, I support that. But just currently the way we have done tax abatement has kind of boosted gentrification in certain neighborhoods and kind of got us to where we are now.
Is there, again, a lot of people don't know that they can use the tax abatement to renovate, right? Everybody believes it's just if you build a new house and that, to maintain and propel the housing stock. One of the things that I see a lot is, and would love to see something from council, demo to prevent demolition and to incentivize repair rather than demolition. Because a lot of these old buildings, it's cheaper to knock it down and build something new than to try and renovate or refit or retrofit. If we could, see something there to incentivize. And yeah, I'm not going to debate.
No, because I've had this conversation with some of the neighborhood preservation folks.
Right.
And I'm really open to creating something to help support that, because I do believe we need to maintain some of the current housing stock that we have in the city. I get it's easy to do a demolition and a rebuild as opposed to maintaining some of the current structures. But we have been talking about programs to incentivize preservation, especially close to historic, some of the aesthetics of the city that we're losing quickly with A
Yeah,
lot of
no, I mean,
the buildable projects.
it's right. I lived in Point Breeze. I live in Germantown. Like, I don't like seeing buildings get knocked down. I mean, you look at Fishtown and Northern Liberties, like these cool old buildings are all, like the city looks different.
Very different.
Which
So I
pros and cons, but yeah.
so I think that we're seeing some progress. I wanted to mention Jared Solomon has the Act 58 that it would be targeting affordable housing abatements, especially in low income and affordable housing, what we're talking about. So that's something that's coming down the pike, and we're interested to see how that lands, here in the city. But I think there are things on the horizon. I think that when I did vote when we did the scale down of the tax abatement,
Right.
but I do believe we can end it. I don't believe that I think we need to think of tax abatement differently than what we have. And I think that we have to find a way.
How do we make it more affordable to build in the city then? Because I mean, how do we incent, right? We're the one of the arguably most expensive cities to build in the country, behind Manhattan. We don't have Manhattan prices, but then you get rid of the tax abatement, and if our development dries up,
I don't see development drying up. Development has been booming throughout the city. Most of the neighborhoods do not even look the same. And even with the rollback of the 10-year tax abatement, it still has not slowed people down from building. But we have not seen is the investments that we're talking about. Folks being able to know that they can use it for major repairs, and those are the things we need to be focusing on right now. Because and keep in mind, we're in the middle of everywhere. So every time I meet new folks in these new developments, when we go into different neighborhoods, none of them work in Philly. They live in DC, work in DC and New York. Very few, or they're here temporarily for job switching over. So we need to find a way to incentivize living for long-term Philadelphians. And that's why this investment into the tax abatement needs to look different.
Right. Do you have thoughts on providing low-income housing tax credits for development to push more of that? I know that the system now rewards or allows people to upzone for low-income housing. Is there more we could be doing there?
I'm not against it. Affordability is important. Long-term stability is important. And I think we need to continue to talk about that, because I would hate to see another iteration of university city townhomes where we incentivize folks for low-income housing, created low-income housing, had a generation of folks there, and then at the end of the term lease, someone's going to sell it and turn it into something completely different in a neighborhood that was a historically Black neighborhood that was demolished by Penn and has been completely gentrified as we move over time.
Right.
So it has to make complete sense to me. And I'm not against it, but we need to have a solid plan for long-term stability of this housing. And I think we see it happen. I use in University City Townhomes. The other one in West Philly, oh God, what do they call it? The West Philadelphia Towers that are getting ready to come down at 30th and 34th and Market. Right. So we see historic investments in the low income housing that was given by the government that are now coming to an end, that's now turning into not even mixed use housing.
Right.
Not unaffordable houses for people in the city. It's leaving thousands and thousands of low income residents scrambling for housing in a city that has no affordable housing.
Right.
So I think when it was done, it was a good idea, but I think we didn't plan it out for generations to come. And I don't want to be on record in generations to come being someone who planned out something that didn't benefit generations of low income people, because the reality is there will always be folks that are low income.
Right.
Unless we go to a real socialist society. That's a whole nother conversation that I'm not going to have.
We don't have to go there. All right, so I'm gonna sort of wrap up on we'll go back on a high note, but like, what are you most excited about this council term? Are you like gonna take over since all these vacancies happened? Are you running the show now, or what are you most excited about?
I am waiting to see how Council President kind of plugs us into committees. That's very exciting. It's like a waiting game.
Okay.
I am very interested in chairing other committees besides the Committee on Intergenerational Affairs and Aging. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to bring in new council colleagues in the 9th and the 7th district.
Right.
And I'm very excited to kind of build with my colleagues. Like, I don't even know what to expect. I started it saying, like, we entered council in an unprecedented time.
Yeah.
We spent 3 months in council before the world closed down.
Right.
And it has never been the same yet. So we're at the end of our first term and haven't done more than, I don't know, 3, maybe 2 months worth of sessions in person.
Yeah. I've asked all your colleagues this question, so I'm glad I remembered. Who are your buddies on council? Who do you drive with? Who do you talk shop with?
It's pretty evident because we're usually in pictures together.
Right.
Probably me, Helen, and Jamie, and Isaiah. Isaiah and I, our families went to the same church together. So I remember when he was a small child. And his brother and I used to, sing on a choir together. So we go way back. And then I think there are other colleagues that, we have a close relationship as well. Like Councilmember Jones, who's my neighbor on the 4th floor, he always said that I didn't come here to make friends. I came here to make a difference. But in the midst of it, I have met some really good allies over these last couple of months. And, I'm excited to see how they'll continue to grow, through this term and hopefully a second term.
Cool. Well, I'm going to turn it over to Matt. I really appreciate your time. This was informative. Someday we can debate the merits of the tax abatement a little bit more.
I would love to.
But yeah. All right. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate it. And this was informative and fun. So thank you. Jake,
I just want to add, me and Bobby Heenan used to debate the tax abatement quite often.
Okay. I'm a big supporter of the abatement. So I would not have been able to afford my first house, would not have bought my first house without the tax abatement. And yeah, I'm not Alan Dom. I'm just a regular guy.
But what about the schools? I'm gonna just leave that there. What about the schools?
What I mean, think about all the development that happened in 07, 08, 09. That $160 billion that even if it was half of that we now have because all those abatements expired. We had all that development in 07, 08, 09 with expired abatements. We have $160 billion that we wouldn't have. Maybe we have half of it. And to your point that like nobody's developing, all these developers are pushing through permits right now so they can get the full 10-year tax abatement before the 7.5 takes over.
But I don't think that's going to stop them from developing. I think.
Well, I hope not. I would love to be wrong. I would love to be wrong there. And yes, I think we'll still see some development. But if it stagnates, then we're a shrinking city again. And then we have less people, we have less supply, and prices keep going up, and we run into those issues.
Well, we could use more for low-income housing. So
absolutely.
There's opportunity for tax abatements for low-income housing.
I would love to see that. I would love to testify at council in support of some tax credits for low-income housing. So, okay. And I would love to, continue this conversation. And any way we can help. Sure. Thank you again. And yeah, this was fun. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt and yeah, we really appreciate your time and everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Councilmember Brooks, thank you so much for your time. Jake, you as well. Good conversation. Thank you to all of our folks for jumping on to our coffee talk. Good to get back in the saddle again. Look forward to doing more of these in the upcoming fall season. So please stay tuned to your email inbox for information about upcoming coffee talks and other events. So with that, everybody have a great day. RPAC Social tonight. Join us. See you there. Take care.
Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you again,
Thank
Council.
you.
Appreciate it.